And we are live. We're officially live. Not even 24 hours removed from a rematch of the undisputed heavyweight championship. Alexander Usyk getting once again a competitive and fun decision win over Tyson Fury. In my view, at least really solidifying his place as an all-time heavyweight and one of, if not the best heavyweight of his era. But Nibs, let's just open up the floor here. Obviously for ourselves and anybody in the chat. Appreciate you guys hopping on. What were your initial thoughts on this fight and this ultimately incredible performance, both from Usyk and from Fury?
Man, first things first, happy holidays to everybody, watching, for those of that we won't see, Merry Christmas, all the things, right? Um, let's put it this way, man. That was one of the best Christmas gifts you can get as a boxing fan, bro. Two heavyweights at the highest, quality of the highest quality, going at it for 12 rounds, bro. Like it was probably one of the best heavyweight fights without a knockdown that I've seen. So I loved it. I do think Usyk won. I thought he was a clear winner. I know there are those out there amongst us, including some of our ITR brethren who have who may or may not have been intoxicated at the time they were watching the fight. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Who think Tyson Fury won this thing going away, or that it was much closer than it was? I think Tyson Fury put up a really good fight, but he lost it. Usyk's the man. It does affect my pound for pound rankings, which you guys will see later. We'll talk about that later. But
So I do think that it is important to distinguish between a close fight and a competitive fight, because you can have a competitive fight. To me, this was one of those fights that was a extremely competitive, close rounds. But to me, it wasn't a close fight. When scoring it live, I had it 9-3 for Usyk. I watched it back again. I think I scored around even in place of giving it to Usyk. So I had it 8-3-1 even, pretty close to what the judges had. They had it 8-4. So I think anywhere from 8-4 to even, 9-3, 10-2 might be a little wide, but it felt like Usyk won, and he kind of won it going away, particularly on the back half of the fight, which is kind of what he always does, right? Usyk is a guy that has multiple gears. He gets better as the fight goes on, especially having 12 rounds already to get a look at this guy. He didn't need as much time to warm up this time. Usyk can take 3 or 4 rounds to get going. And it felt like that's the bell for that second round hit, bro. 12 solid left hands to the body in that second round. And it kind of changed the whole fight. To Fury's credit, I felt like he came out with a different and better game plan. I felt he kind of held the center of the ring better. There were times where he was trying at least to make his physicality a part of the. There'd be times where he'd be trying to lean on Usyk, and you think, oh, he's just going to walk him back, and he couldn't walk him back. So I think that he came up against this thing where it's like Usyk is also strong in the pocket. He's also strong on the inside. He's not a power puncher, but he's not a feather fist either. So when a guy can put 3 or 4 shots on you real quick and none of them feel good, it changes the dynamic of the fight. So even with some of the beautiful adjustments that Fury made and landed hard body shots on Usyk, is Usyk's combination punching, his rhythm, his footwork, his hand speed, everything that he brings to the table, bro. Other heavyweights just don't have that skill set. And it's an incredible run we're watching. We're in our chat and we're all breaking balls. That's a different thing. I have seen people legitimately not want to credit this guy for anything that he's doing. And it's just like, what's the harm in enjoying an all-time great? Why do we give these guys their flowers when they don't have it anymore? Because it feels like what we're watching is, even though it's only 7 fights, it feels like a run.
yeah, and I think that you look at what Usyk has done, right? He was the unified champ at cruiserweight. He is the champion and let's put it out there. There is no doubt that he's the man at heavyweight because he beat the man, right? We always say there's a difference between coming in, picking up some vacant belts, against a nobody. He's beaten the creme de la creme in the heavyweight division, right? A lot of people didn't think he was going to beat Anthony Joshua. We saw how that went. A lot of people didn't give him a shot against Fury the first time, and he damn near knocked him out, right? And you saw that in the second fight. I don't think that Tyson Fury was necessarily afraid, but he was very aware of the fact that Usyk can touch him, right? And that he was hurt the first time around, and that affected his game plan.
And he had the yeah, exactly. He had the experience of getting put on his ass the first time. It wasn't like he's not the little rabbit that he's been calling him. It's like the little rabbit's got just enough to pop to make you uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
And excuse me. And you can't hit him as solid. There's a difference between, or a huge difference, I should say, between how solidly you can hit Usyk and how solidly you can hit Deontay Wilder. Right? Now and there's a big difference between fearing what's coming back. I'll give you that. But at the same time, hey, if I can take that punch, I can give him 3 or 4 because he's going to be there. If I take the punch from Usyk, when I go to return fire, nobody's home. And you saw that throughout the fight. And I think you have to give this man his flowers. You have to give him his credit. I think considering the political climate and everything that's going on in the real world, this fight meant a lot more than I think people are going to give this was his Rocky moment. You know what I'm saying? This was shit that they make movies about. So why are we not praising this guy who comes along at the right time and is dominating the heavyweight division? I get it. He's not American. He's not, Tyson Fury, who's all over the place and making movies and this, that, and the third. But he's the best we have, ladies and gentlemen, at the heavyweight division.
He's definitely the best we have. And I think some of those circumstances that he's fighting through, you don't even really need any context for those politics to know that having to train for the highest level of boxing in a war-torn place is a normal person can't do that, bro. A normal person is not going to be able to do that. There's obviously something built different in this guy, and we've seen it in him. We've seen it in Lomachenko. We saw it in the Klitschko's in their day. There's something very special about Ukrainian fighters and Ukrainian athletes, and I think that's part of why it bothers me when people try to use the fact that they are not just a war-torn country, but an invaded country as a means of crediting Usyk for getting the win. If you want to say that you thought Fury won, fine. I think you're wrong. I don't even really think, the Brits always have to throw in, it's a close fight, could go either way, even when it couldn't go either way. They got to throw that in to kind of make themselves feel better. And I just think trying to discredit arguably the best fighter in the world right now, arguably the best heavyweight of his era, arguably a top 10, top 15 heavyweight to ever do it. I just, I think as opposed to trying to say, oh, he got that because of his circumstances, I think the narrative, it's incredible that he's accomplished this with the circumstances that he's under. And then just factor reach. He's got almost 60 pounds in weight that he's down. So all of the advantages are in Fury's favor. All the commentary except Sergio Mora is British. And they're all talking about how great Fury is and Fury's going to win. They're saying Fury's winning the fight, even when Anthony Joshua is not scoring it. It looked like they were looking for every way and every reason and every excuse to say, could go either way. And still Usyk pulled it out. I just think it's incredible, bro.
I mean, let's face it, the commentary is going to go in the way of the money, right? The big money is on a third fight, right? The big money is on Tyson Fury getting the dub in this last fight,
Great
them
point.
doing it third time, right? Running it back, running up the numbers. Here's what I have to say to that. Who wouldn't watch that a third time? You know what I'm saying? Like to me, I don't need
Right.
it immediate, but I'm saying like you can watch that again because of how high level it is. We're giving all the flowers to Usyk as we should, but let's take a moment and give Fury his flowers. Right? Fury did fight a really good fight. He up until Usyk was considered the best heavyweight in the division by a mile. And let's be really clear. If you really wanted to nitpick the rounds, because there were some close rounds, I'm not going to say that there weren't. If you
Absolutely.
wanted to give, if you wanted to give all the close rounds to Usyk, then okay, I could hear your argument. But let's be really clear. He won even the close rounds, right? They were close rounds, but he still won them. So, if I was being nice, I had it 8-4. I could see possibly 7-5 because there were some rounds that were, a little bit closer than I gave Fury credit for. I could see 7-5 max, right? But this gibberish that he won the fight to me is just unrealistic. And I think anybody who scored it that way, they were scoring it that way because they were a fan of Tyson Fury or they were a fan of the big money and wanted to see a third fight. That's my opinion on that.
Or maybe another possibility for why that is people think the power discrepancy. Fury really sits down on 2 body shots, they're willing to say, "Oh, that's his round." But I just think that it's Usyk is not he's not a Paulie Malignaggi, man. He's put this guy on his ass already. He hurt times in this fight. Not put him out, definitely clipped him and he got his attention and he got him buzzed. And I just think that to go back to they're one of those rivalries where it's like they're kind of made for each other. So it's like some Serrano and Taylor, it's like Canelo and Triple G. There's just certain guys that are kind of made for each other, and these two guys are that. And while I think that Usyk is going to win most every time that they get into the ring, I don't think they're ever going to get into the ring, and it's not a great. Any Tyson Fury knows how to do it's make an adjustment. I mean, he's shown that his whole career. He comes back after the first Wilder fight with a completely different game plan and wipes the fucking floor with Wilder. He's shown the ability to do that over and over again. So in terms of seeing it again, I'd have no problem seeing it again. Which I guess kind of leads into what do they kind of do next? I mean, for Usyk, he's gotten to the precipice, the epitome of heavyweight boxing, the undisputed heavyweight championship against the other best guy of your era. There's a lot of talent in the heavyweight division right now, but none of those fights are going to be as appealing or as lucrative as his fights with Tyson Fury. What do you think that Usyk does next, or what would you like to see him do next?
Whatever the fuck he wants to. And I think he's deserved that. I think there are a couple of different avenues. I think the two most common are going to be he's either going the money route, right? So he's going to fight Jake Paul at some point or some shit like that, or he's just going to fight the guys that are going to make him the most money. If a rematch with AJ makes the most sense financially, he'll do that. Dubois, in all his silliness, if he wants to go that route, he can. Maybe fuck it, maybe a trilogy again against, Tyson Fury because maybe he feels disrespected that people are saying he lost these 2 fights, right? Who knows? But whatever he decides to do is going to be the right answer because he's earned the right to do it. Will he avoid Bacoli? If he does, I'm one of those guys that's like, oh, well, he's avoiding trouble. But I think he's earned the right to do whatever the hell he wants next. If he wants to take a break, cool, he can do that too. But I think whatever he does next is going to be
Also,
the right answer.
I think avoid is a tough word too, because avoid implies that he's taking lesser fights than Bacoli. Well, his last 5 fights, he's fought Fury twice, AJ twice, and Daniel Dubois. So to say he's avoiding Bacoli, I don't know that he's avoiding anybody. I think he's taking the absolute best fights he can take in the division. No more Fury or AJ. Definitely no more AJ. To some extent, too, Jesus Sam, I agree with you. I don't need to see it. I'd have no problem seeing it, but I don't need to see it. I think the fight that I'm the most interested in at the moment, well, there's really 2. I would love to see him get the Dubois Parker winner. To me, that's an obvious, Joe Parker has more than earned the fight. Dubois, I think, has earned the rematch as well and is kind of on, a real ascent coming into his prime. There's also a world where the winner of that fight fights the winner of Zhang and Agit Kabayel, and that becomes definitely the most interesting opponent for Usyk. The other thing I would love to potentially see him do, if possible, is go back down to cruiserweight, because cruiserweight was probably a better division when he was there, but there's some bigger names there now, like Zordo Ramirez, like Jaio Pataya. There's some guys who it's not like a Myris Bradis, who's a really good fighter, but who the fuck knows him outside of boxing. There's some guys with some name power at cruiserweight. And I also think, similar in age, I think it would be interesting to see Usyk and Beterbiev have a fight at cruiserweight. I think that that's one of those intriguing sort of
Now you're
alternative.
dreaming. Now you're
I am
dreaming.
dreaming. I'm definitely dreaming, but they did fight in the amateurs multiple times, and maybe Beterbiev, should he beat Bivol in their second fight, maybe he wants to move up to cruiserweight. And if he did, I think that'd be fun, bro.
My question is there's a third option, and it's not one I'm a fan of. But again, I could see it happening, and although I might not like it, wouldn't disagree with him if he did it. What if he just retires? Right? What if Usyk says, "Fuck it, I'm riding off into the sunset." I mean, what? Like you just said, what else can we really ask of him to do at this point, right? All of those scenarios you just played out are dream wish scenarios. Like we want you to do this. But if he says, "Well, fuck it, I did everything I wanted to do, and my country is in this war," you know what I'm saying? I mean, and let's be really clear, folks. And I'm not a political guy. I'm not trying to get into all that, but this is a war at his home. There are people coming out of their homes to fight this war. This isn't, like what with us. We have a war. We send our folks somewhere else. Imagine going outside and having to throw your pots and pans at soldiers, right? Like this is what he's dealing with back home. So what if he decides, hey, fuck it, I'm gonna go help fight my war, and he shuts it down? I wouldn't be opposed to that, because then he gets to just ride off into the sunset on a high, and there's really not much we could do about it.
Yes, Jesus Sam, the war is very much still going on. Definitely don't go to your boxing pundits for your international politics, but yes, Russia is still invading Ukraine and is actively pursuing violence against Ukraine, and it is still an active war zone. All the more amazing that Usyk is able to become the undisputed heavyweight champion and then retain his undisputed heavyweight championship. I don't know why Lomachenko is retiring. I would assume that anybody from that area is facing struggles, whether it's their own struggles or the struggles of their family and their friends. It's a crazy time. To be honest
All
with
the
you,
fighters, like you said, all the fighters from that area are dealing with this,
absolutely. And it's fucking brutal. And I guess Lomachenko, I think, might be a little different just because it seems like he's had a lot more injuries, and like Usyk, he's been doing it for a little longer. He's been fighting guys that are a lot bigger than him. And I know obviously Usyk is doing that as well. But Lomachenko, really, since like his 7th fight, is fighting guys that are 2 or 3 weight classes bigger than him. naturally. So, listen, bro, I just think it's an amazing accomplishment. And, in terms of Usyk retiring, it would be the epitome of going out on top because he's clearly, even though he's 38, he's still basically at the top of his game. I mean, I haven't seen any kind of decline in him. If anything, I think he's getting smarter and he's starting to really come into his own as a heavyweight. But like Andre Ward said, bro, why can't I just have one more? Why can't I just have one more in me? And if Usyk wanted to have this be his moment to ride off, it'd be fucking beautiful, bro. Be about as good as you could do it.
But in that vein, right? We all, at least for me, I thought when Andre Ward retired, I was like, what? What are you doing, bro? I thought he had at least 3 or 4 more good fights in him. You know what I'm saying? At the highest level. But I had to be like, you know what? I can't even be mad because let's face it, people are still mentioning Andre Ward's name in fights with Canelo and dream fights. People are still trying to get this dude out of retirement. I mean, fuck it, why not, bro? Like if it were me, right? And it's like, okay, I won everything in my preferred weight class at cruiser. Couldn't nobody touch me there. I could probably go back and wipe it out again if I really wanted to. Came to heavyweight, beat all the names, right? Not one or two. I didn't get lucky once. I beat all the names convincingly, and I might add. There's nothing left for me to do. Drop the mic, exit stage left, be easy.
And how often do we get that in boxing? I can only think of a handful of examples where guys really go out on top. Lennox Lewis, Andre Ward, Sinise Estrada, but they're few and far between. A lot of times it's not even just retiring when you're no longer at your best. It's taking beatings. It's becoming a shell of what you once were.
Roy Jones Jr.
I hate to say it, but he is kind of the textbook example of that, as somebody who was once like an athletic specimen that became a punching bag for almost a decade, and it was very difficult to watch. So, if this is where Usyk wants to bow out, I think that's a beautiful thing. But let's talk about Fury for a second, because I think that he's still somebody that I want to see in the mix. I would love to see him and Dubois get it on. You know what I mean? I would love to see Fury fight the winner of Zhang and Caballel or Parker and Dubois. They're already talking about, Fury and AJ at Wembley, doing it kind of a la Kell Brook and Amir Khan, where, yeah, it wasn't the fight. We should have made the fight when we were in our primes, but before we go out, let's go settle that score. I still think that Tyson Fury seems like he's a guy that has a lot to offer. I just wonder if he's going to be willing and motivated to get up for fights that aren't the absolute biggest fights in the division at this point, to just get up for challenging fights.
I mean, the loss for Fury to me is it's almost unfair to him, right? Because of the resume and what he's built up to the point of Usyk, right? Now, all people are going to talk about is, oh, well, you couldn't beat Usyk, this, that, and the third. Let's be real clear. First off, these were two really competitive fights, right? It wasn't like he got whitewashed against Usyk. I thought he was winning a large part of the first fight until he got knocked down, and then it was just like he was just surviving at that point, right? And I think Usyk edged it because of the knockdown. This fight, I think he was a little bit more gun shy and a little bit more. Again, I don't want to even say that. I think he was just a little bit more responsible than we're used to seeing Tyson Fury being, which to his detriment, right? Like maybe against anybody else, that kind of mindset would have won him the fight. Against maybe an AJ or a Wilder, he wins the fight fighting that responsible. I think against Usyk, he had to be his older self. I think he should have done more of what he did in the first fight, just with a better pace. You know what I'm saying? And I think he could have pulled it out. I think the sky's the limit for him. I mean, let's face it, he's still the biggest draw in the heavyweight division, right? And that's considering he just lost to the man, right? He could probably fight anybody right now. He could fight you and me in the same night, and more people will show up to watch that than anything Usyk does next, which is, it doesn't have to be fair. If you want fair, go get a pig. So this is what Tyson Fury is. He can do whatever he wants. I think you're right though. I think he's gonna it's gonna be the motivation for him. Like, okay,
Right. It's just
I'm
going to be a matter of, is it worth putting in these camps? You know, a training camp is a lot on your body, bro. It just is, especially when you're a big guy like that. It's a lot on your body. Obviously, with heavyweights, they don't have to cut weight, right? So there's that, but it's a lot, bro. It's a lot. And I just wonder, is there going to be another fight that matters to him enough to get up for? Um, do I want to see him in the ring still? I absolutely want to see him in the ring still. But I also think that, you know, clips I've seen of him, he can't seem to accept that he lost both of these fights. He plays the "I got robbed" card, or the "it was a close fight. Either way, fair play to him." All that British shit, that frankly all the Brits do when their guys lose. But it doesn't seem like he's really accepted that there might be something I have to get better at, or there might be something I have to work on, or there might be an adjustment or something I could have done better. That doesn't seem to be the mindset that he's in. Um, and truth be told, bro, I think in this one, he had a better approach, but he couldn't get Usyk's timing. You know, when Fury fights other heavyweights, he's usually the guy with the speed. He's usually the guy with the timing. He's usually the guy with the IQ. And in all of those categories, he was second best. He couldn't get Usyk's hand speed. He couldn't get his timing. He couldn't figure out how to nullify that left hand of the body. And I think that there were times where his hands were in his pocket because he did start to get worried about what was coming back at him because he couldn't see it.
in all fairness, because I am one of the biggest proponents of Amanda Serrano beating Katie Taylor in both their fights. So, and everybody who opposes me in that says, well, they were really close. It was a really close fight, but they'll give all the reasons why Katie Taylor won. So, in that vein, I will give Fury grace, right? Because this was a very competitive, close fight. So, depending on what
I
you
don't
do
think it
like,
was
right?
close, though. I don't think it was close,
But
though, bro. I think it was
I,
competitive. I don't think it was close.
and I'm getting there. For me and you, nah, this was again, like I said, if I scored it just off of my regular view, it was 9-3. I gave it 8-4. Could have seen 7-5, but the reason I say that is it's a close fight if you like what Tyson Fury does, right? He did land really hard punches, and there were a couple of times where I was like, okay, he's on his stick. He didn't do it enough, right? But if you like the cleaner punches, if you like the heavier punches, you see the bruising on Usyk's face. Tyson looks like he just started the fight when the fight's over. I get it. He did just enough in those rounds to make you think, oh maybe, right? And he did just enough to have the argument he's having right now, right? And in all fairness, he did just enough to be able to have that argument. Okay, I'll give it to you, bro. But you still lost. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, like it or not, you still caught an L. So, and it's just like, my argument with Amanda Serrano. Yes, I think she won the fight, but at the end of the day, she caught an L. She's got to deal with that and move on. So I think that he has to accept it, or not even necessarily accept that he lost the fight, but accept that he's got a loss on his ledger and what that means for him going forward, bro. And again, at the end of the day, you're still Tyson fucking Fury. You're going to be able to fight whoever the fuck you want to be able to fight. I don't think these two losses to Usyk affects his box office as nearly as much as Usyk losing would have affected his.
Sorry, muted. Or frankly, as much as the Ngannou fight would have. I felt like the Ngannou fight did way more damage to Fury's brand than either of these two Usyk fights, because there's no doubt that he showed up prepared and ready for a hard 12 on this one, bro. I all the respect in the world to him, man. Whatever either of these guys want to do next, all the respect in the world to him. Um, a strange, I don't even want to call it strange, but a strangely low profile undercard for a fight of this magnitude, right? There were some matchups on here that we were looking forward to. I personally was really looking forward to Israel Madrimov and Serhii Bohachuk. That was a hell of a matchup against two legitimately top 10 154 pounders. Peter McGrail's opponent gets hurt. That would have been more so a big regional UK fight, but even so, I think that would have added to the atmosphere. So in light of it being kind of a low profile undercard, we're not going to go, every single fight by fight, but I do think it's worth mentioning 19-year-old Moses Itauma, who I can't recall ever seeing a 19-year-old guy fight like this, Nibs. I mean, the kid is just an absolute fucking monster. He's not even 20 years old, and he looks like a finished product. And sometimes, obviously, it's impressive. There's another part of it where it can get a little scary, because my instinct as a fan is to say, well, shit, throw him in there with a top 10 guy now. It kind of looks like he could fuck them all up. But when you got a kid that's that young, that's still maturing, that's still, growing as a man and as a fighter, you don't want to move that too fast, right? But what do you think you do with a 19-year-old kid who looks like he might be a phenom? You know what I mean?
Look, bro, I've seen one fight of that kid's before. I'm not even going to try to disrespect people by making it seem like I watched that fight. Due to my current work schedule, I caught the main event after the first round, so I was a round down into the main event. I had and had to watch the first round in between round 1 and 2, so on YouTube. So I can't comment on his most recent fight, but I get what you're saying, right? From what I saw of him and from what I hear online, you just reading this, the breakdowns of the fight card. Anytime you get a kid who's in his 20s or his teens who looks like he's got it all together, that gets me excited, because I'd much rather have that than just the hype train, right? Oh, this is just a guy who's got knockout power, or he's really flashy. Nah, like, give me a guy who looks like he could be the next Jairo Pataya kind of guy, or the next
It's a great
David
comparison.
Morrell, or things like that. Give me that kind of guy. I follow him all day.
Yeah. So I just think with the Itauma, it's like, he's definitely a sky's the limit kind of guy. But sometimes with guys that are so incredible young, Mike Tyson, Fernando Vargas, they do become legends, but it's a light that shines bright only but for so long. So I'm wondering if, in 2024, the way you move a kid like that is different. We're going to see how that plays out. I think the other
But
guy
there's
worth,
something to be said about that. There's something to be said about the phenom who has that 5 year window, right? As opposed to a guy like Floyd who does it for how many every years. It might
20
not
years. Yeah.
necessarily, yeah, but it might not necessarily be the most electrifying fighter, right? As far as what knockouts and shit like that. But there's something to be said about that little short window guy who gets in there and does just enough to get people to go, "Oh shit!" every time he hits the ring. So
Well,
I
because
love you.
it's really just so rare that you see, like, when we're watching, I'm trying to think of a good example. When we're watching Jahai Tucker, when he goes pro, right? He's 17, 18, 19 years old. I'm looking at this kid going, wow, ton of potential. Like, this is really going places. When I watch Moses, it looks like he's there. Like, he just knocked out a top 25 guy in the first round at 19 years old. So it's just a speed of advancement that we don't always see that, bro. So it's just going to be interesting to see how quickly do they move him, how quickly, because it's almost like the opposite of a Richard Torres, where I see the goods with Richard, but the opponents, it's just been like painfully slow of a progression, bro, for the last 5 years. And then this kid comes along, and a year in, he's got 11 fights, and he's fighting the top 25 guys, smoking them out in the first round. It's incredible to watch.
When would you say was the last time you saw that kind of talent right out the gate. And we're not, and I'm not talking about these Olympic studs, right? They're the Olympic guys who are coming in their mid 20s, damn near 30, or in their 30s, right? Who obviously look like because they're grown ass men. You know what I'm saying? And let's face it, they've been doing it at a professional level. They've just been doing it in the Olympics, right? When was the last time you saw a kid who was in his late teens, early 20s, maybe even mid? We'll give him 25 as the stretch, right? Up to that point, and you go, 3 or 4, 10 fights in, you go, he's got it. That's the guy. Besides him, when was the last time you could say you honestly saw that, bro?
Yeah, I think the most obvious recent example is Abdullah Mason. Like it's always just kind of felt like, all right, we know where this kid is headed. He's headed to big places, you know what I mean? But even Abdullah is now in his early 20s and is not necessarily at the point of progression that Moses is at. And so that's what I'm saying. I don't know if we've seen something quite like this at this point. And every fighter develops different. But I can't recall ever seeing another 19-year-old fighter that looked like potentially he was a finished product. This is a first.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say Shakur, but even Shakur had to get 15, 20 fights in before he was fighting top
Yeah.
tier guys. So I
And then
even
there's
at
the
that point, I'm
Olympic
like,
stuff.
yeah.
And then there's kind of the Olympic studs, right? Like, it was pretty obvious early that Lomachenko was the goods. It was pretty obvious early on that, like, okay, we're watching Robesi in his 5th fight, but he looks like he could be a world champion at some point, which wound up being true. So there are guys that show that promise early, but I think this kid is special, bro. The other guy I think worth mentioning, Serhii Bohachuk, like we said, he was going to fight Madrimov. Madrimov both gets sick and signs a fight with Virgil Ortiz for the mega card in February. You can interpret that how you want to. Maybe he actually did get sick, or maybe it's just not practical to fight 2 top 10 guys in a 2-month period with 2 training camps, however you want to look at that. But Bohachuk beating Ishmael Davis, pretty dominant. Davis puts up a good fight in the first round, but Bohachuk, 25-2 with 24 knockouts. He's clearly one of the best punchers, if not the best puncher at 154. And I think is proving at the moment to be one of those contenders. He's going to give a lot of guys a lot of the longest nights of their careers. And I don't know if he ever gets over the hump against a Virgil or against a Terrence Crawford, but he's going to be the hardest night they ever had. And I do think we're watching a guy who is a legitimate, durable, and threatening contender.
You know what excites me, guys, about guys like him is I think we're finally getting out of. I wouldn't say we're completely out, but I think we're headed towards getting out of the era where the O's matter as much, right? Like everybody has to be undefeated for them to matter. And I think guys like him, and even before he quit, Robesi, the Lomachenkos of the world, even, you look at Tiafimo. I think now we're getting to a point where guys are realizing you can be blockbuster, you can be the guy and still have L's on your ledger. You know what I'm saying? And is I think guys are starting to figure out it isn't losing that matters. It's how you lose and then how you come back and win that
Right.
makes you your legend. And there are a lot of guys who got O's, right? That probably aren't nearly as talented as some of these kids that have 2 or 3 losses that came up the hard way.
Well, go through boxing history, right? You and me been around this game for a long time. How often did you look at the top 10 pound for pound and there was an unbeaten fighter in there? Almost never. I mean, by the time you got to a pound for pound list, you had already lost and proven yourself that you know what I mean? So I think the even simpler way to put it is just like losing is a part of boxing. And you can try to use your O as a marketing tool for as long as you can. But that loss is coming, brother. It's coming. It's not something you can
What
avoid.
what did the oh my goodness, what did Don King say when they asked him, about the Thriller in Manila. He said they asked him, you know, a question. He said the only person who lost tonight was the person who didn't watch this fight. You know what I'm saying? So when you think about that, because you have two guys, obviously, not only pound for pound at that time in space, but two legends in the sport fighting each other. There is no loss, bro. At the end of the day, if you fight the best, you can only win because you can learn from it and you can come back. I have way more respect for Edgar Berlanga after fighting Canelo and losing than I did pretty much any of his previous
Well,
wins.
and doesn't it also kind of show how hollow an unbeaten record is if you haven't been tested, going into your biggest fight? Shock
Look at Munguia.
Foster, look at Munguia. Shock Foster lost twice early in his career, and I think that those were defining moments that are what make him so tough to beat. Is because he knows how bad that feels. You know what I mean? And he doesn't want to ever go back to that place. So we're seeing how hollow, a meaningless, untested, unbeaten record is. And, I'd rather take a guy like Shock Foster or Joseph Parker or Daniel Dubois or any host of guys that have lost fights, Lomachenko, than somebody who's 35-0 and hasn't fought a 500 record. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything.
I'll say this. I became a fan of Mario Barrios after him losing the Tank, right? And it
Yeah.
wasn't just because you lost the Tank. It was the fact that I could see that what that loss meant to him, right? Like in the moment. Like you see this dude, he's like, fuck. And then the way he comes back and he loses again to Keith Thurman, but the fact that he moved up to 147 to do it, right? And now you look at him and it's like, I ride with a guy like that, a guy who's going to put all his skill and balls on the line at the same time and say, fuck it, let's go. Sign me up, bro. Guys like that make this sport what it is. And it's like, yeah, we all love, the Floyd Mayweathers. We all love the Tanks. We all love the Muhammad Ali's and all that, right? But at the end of the day, and even Muhammad Ali wasn't undefeated, but you love the guys that are just uber talented and can wipe the floor with anybody. But give me the guy that's extremely talented, who's going to put it on the line every time. And no matter what you see, right, win or lose, you're going to see a great fight. So, I think I said all that to say, I think we're getting to a point now where we're getting out of the Mayweather era, right? Guys understand, hey, you can make a shitload of money without being undefeated.
I mean, a great example that we got to see this year. Look at Angelo Leo, bro. He loses a tough decision to Stephen Fulton a couple years ago. Doesn't fight for nearly 2 years. Builds himself back up, and then comes in against Venado Lopez as an underdog and knocks him clean out with not a big knockout percentage. That's a couple times we saw that this year. We saw that with Munguia and Angelo Leo, but I think that's a beautiful example. I think one more thing I'll just mention briefly. Johnny Fisher getting what I would say a bad decision over Dave Allen. Dave Allen is kind of like a regional UK fringe contender. He's a fun watch. He's got a lot of experience. He's been in with a lot of guys. He's sort of a gym legend. And Johnny Fisher's been an undefeated prospect out of Britain that's been moved similarly to Richard Torres, right? Like you see, there's some things to like here, but we're moving at a snail's pace because, he didn't have the same type of experience. And Fisher won the first 3 or 4 rounds pretty clean, gets dropped hard in the 5th, and is kind of hanging on for dear life the rest of the fight. And it felt like Dave Allen really took the fight over. And they unfortunately gave it to Fisher. And so sometimes that is the value of that. Is you get the benefit of the doubt in those types of moments where you got a guy like Dave Allen who's like 23-8 and 3 draws or whatever his record is, and you got a guy like Johnny Fisher, unbeaten, younger, probably a little bit more upside. And so he gets the benefit of the doubt in that kind of decision. That was really disappointing, bro, because you just, when a veteran like that is able to pull it out, you just want to see him get credit for it.
But see, that pisses me off too, because You know what? Yeah, I get it. The prospects are the prospects, right? But we also need the Joe Smith Juniors of the world, right? We need the guy who's coming in from his day job, who's coming in as the opponent and shocks the world, right? It doesn't always have to be a knockout, but maybe he gets this clear win, right? But it gets taken away from him. Why? Not because he got beat, but because the other guy, again, money, the other kid is more important to the state of boxing. Hey, we have more invested in this guy, so we're going to give him the win. I tell people all the time, if you really love boxing, right, and you want to see somebody get jobbed, go back and watch Emmanuel Augustus, right? This dude caught more split decision losses than I think any and bullshit split decision losses than I think I've seen in the sport of boxing. Period. Let alone for one guy.
Well,
Right?
and don't even
Why?
they're in they're in the draws.
Right. But why? Because he's a career opponent. He's that last
Did we
second
lose
guy you
Nibs?
call. Hello? You just lose me?
Now we got you back. We got you. It looked like you cut out for a sec.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, you get this guy who's always in shape, right? He's always a phone call away, but the risk is he can beat your fighter. You know what I'm saying? And that's what these kind of guys were. And I think you actually do a disservice to the undefeated kid by giving them a gift decision. I think it's better to lose early and then learn something and then move forward.
Well, we apologize for any technical difficulties. If anybody's having a hard time hearing us, it ain't always perfect, folks. We're doing our best. Sometimes that's just what it is. Um, Nibs, this was the only card of note on this weekend. Next week, we were supposed to actually on Tuesday, we were supposed to get Naoya Inoue against Sam Goodman. Tremendous matchup. Sam Goodman gets a cut in sparring about 2-3 weeks ago, and a new opponent has not been put in. So obviously, Inoue will have to come back at a later date. The only other card of note for the rest of the year is on December 31st. We have the rematch between Fernando Martinez and Japanese champion Kazuto Yoka. Ioka he's a hell of a fighter. He unfortunately doesn't get a lot of US TV dates, but when you go down his resume and you look at who he's fought, um, it's one of if not the most underrated guy in boxing today. A highly decorated, accomplished champion that outside of Japan, people just don't really know that well. See, you might not even get to watch that fight, bub, even though it's a world-class world title bout. Um, in the meantime, for the remainder of the year, we will be back next week to give you some version of a year-end awards to talk about the year in boxing in 2024, which has had some real high highs and some real low lows, some real exciting moments. Um, and we look forward to doing that with you guys. And I guess the only thing left to do is have our guy Nibs talk about the importance of supporting local boxing.
I just want to again, we're not a political show, but look at what's going on with the guy we just talked about for a majority of the show, right? This dude is a unified world champion in two weight classes, two of the harder weight classes, right? To be unified in. And he has a war at home. That is the epitome of supporting local boxing, right? These people are still supporting him. Think about that. These people are going through war, literally, outside their front door. And there are people still showing up to support a guy in a boxing ring. I don't think there's really much else you have to say about that, folks.
Beautifully said, my friend. It was a legendary performance from an all-time great. We will see you guys next week. We always appreciate everybody that tunes in, everyone in the comments section. Jesus M, our third co-host for the day. We always appreciate you, my guy, and we will catch you next week.